Hello. Today I have a super special guest. I've had him on before. He's my favorite, so I brought him back. This is my husband, Ruslan. We will be married 25 years this month, and I thought it would be a good person to interview because I know that God has really brought us together intentionally, not only for his purposes, but because it has brought so much joy into our lives and wholeness and healing. And I feel like God has used our marriage so much to give me personally more understanding of who God is, how much he loves, how good he is to us, how he uses people in our lives to heal us, draw us out more, grow us up, mature us. Um, yeah, I just thought it would be cool if we talk a little bit about what it's been like to be married for 25 years and how we made it work. um, so I guess I'll start with we met in 1998. He came all the way from Lithuania to Little Chico, California. I came all the way from Cedarville, California, a teeny tiny town of 800. I was going to get closer to God and not be distracted by anything of this world. And then here comes this hot rush into my school. That was very, God just brought us together. So, anyways, there's a whole fun story in that, but we ended up getting married a year after we met in 1999. Got pregnant right away, had our first son, Daniel, in 2000. And now we have 5 children. Obviously, I'm fast forwarding a lot, just giving you the picture. We lived in California and then, well, Sacramento, then Redding, then Oregon. When we first got married, I realized I had a fantasy mentality about marriage. I really thought because it was so God ordained, because God told my mom that this was my future husband before I even knew that I liked him. And she kept it a secret, which was the miracle in itself. No, she knew it was God. So she pondered it in her heart until he asked me to marry him. And then she said, I have something to show you. And it was amazing confirmation. But, anyways, I had this fantasy mentality that because it was so God ordained, it was going to be perfect. And I even had an expectation that we would never argue. And that lasted about
Yeah, she forgot to tell me about it.
yeah.
That's probably why we argued all the time in our first marriage. I mean, first year of marriage.
Absolutely, yeah. So I realized quickly that was a little idealistic. So, okay, we're going to argue,
We're
but
gonna
only
argue.
occasionally.
Okay.
So basically, marriage started bringing up all of our stuff. And turns out I had lots of baggage, and I feel like Ruslan had like a carry-on. But
It was a compacted, vacuum sealed, heavy carry on, though.
thank you. Yes, so we had our issues. We didn't really know, obviously. We knew we're not perfect. Well, actually, I think I thought I was perfect, and he was lucky to be marrying this Christian perfect girl. Well, it turns out I had a lot of issues that I did not realize. And just that I even had that mentality is so weird. But, anyways, yes, lots of humbling in marriage. I feel like having kids brought out the recognition of, okay, we can either remain selfish and try to force our way into keeping it our way, or lay it all down and become parents.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's, you just have to. You have to lay down your life for these children. And it begins to bring up all the stuff, which was good and hard. We just kept working at the stuff. We really loved each other. So that helped a ton. And God just gave us, I feel like He just gave us little people along the way. Well, you kind of felt culturally it wasn't really normal to go to counseling or something,
Well,
right?
it did not exist.
Okay.
It, I mean, it existed, but not really where I come from. And going to a counselor would be admitting you're weak and you fail. So that to me was not an option. Thus, no counselor for me or for us as a couple.
Right. And at that point, I didn't even know I could still have gone maybe and like figured out, well, what's going on here? I felt if you want to heal the marriage, we have to go together. We have to do it together. So it wasn't until several years in that, well, I did start working on myself as far as spiritually, emotionally, um, more spiritually. I thought everything was spiritual. Like, if I seek first his kingdom, then all these things will be added. But I was pretty extremist and I didn't recognize it. So I would kind of ignore my emotional needs
Well,
because,
it's true. I think I still believe it does work if you seek the kingdom of God.
mm-hmm,
Those things will be added, but because you're open to see those things being added
true,
and
that's good.
recognizing where the problem is or how you can improve those things. So absolutely, that word is true. It's just a lot of people package it in such a way that you do nothing and it will be added to you. Well, that's not
Right.
the case necessarily.
Yeah, that's a good point because I was seeking with all of my heart for sure kingdom. I just didn't know that the answers were coming, but they looked very practical and they looked normal and not supernatural. They just looked super natural. And I had to start learning to accept that, okay, I guess I do have needs and in this physical, natural realm. And I actually have to voice those needs to my husband because he doesn't do hints well. And I don't think any men do.
Yeah, I want to expound on that. I was trying to hint, no pun intended, to her that that's
It's not working.
mostly a guy issue, a male issue. That we as guys, many of us, that is, we don't do well with hints or trying to read some hidden clues, but we do very well when we're asked to do
Directly.
stuff, and most of us do.
All right.
So to me, as a husband in this relationship, I was very frustrating whenever I would miss the mark by being able to uncover the hidden clues that were laying all around me. But it turned out those hidden clues turned into a minefield for me because every time
Oh,
something was
miss
missed, it was heard by me in
later.
later on. So anyway, so transparency in relationship and communication was important for us at that stage. And I guess, not I guess, but we have done much better with that and just making your needs known or asking
hmm
direct questions, that helps a lot.
I really had to learn that because it was very uncomfortable for me to, first of all, acknowledge needs and then express that need because it's very vulnerable. And yeah, it took me years really to get comfortable with that. And thankfully, like I said, in the midst of all of this, we had a lot of love for each other. So we had great times, we had good connections, a good intimate connection. And it was just kind of minefields for me as well in my own triggers that would come out of nowhere that I would be like, what is happening? But it would consume you and feel so present and real that this is the truth. I couldn't see clearly when I was triggered. And then, of course, he had his triggers, and our triggers would trigger each other more. And so we just had to work through. Yeah, I think minefield is a really good analogy for those. And with each baby, we learned more about ourselves, about parenting. Just it's been amazing to see how God has given us five different children, five different personalities. We have four boys, one girl. We thought we would have maybe two, or for sure two kids, maybe three. And God had different plans.
Yeah,
So,
that's actually a plug to those of you who are thinking, who are younger and thinking maybe should we have kids or should we wait? I would say have kids, because
mm-hmm.
that will stretch you and humble you in ways that you've never thought that you would be stretched in. And that's a good thing, because looking back at who we were before kids,
Mm-hmm.
I would say that if we never had kids, I, for one, would be a very different person. I would be weird, more weird than I am now. I'd probably be very selfish, and I don't know. Like, it's
Yeah.
just made me a better person. God have used that in both of our lives to
Mm-hmm.
just confront some of the things within ourselves and in our relationship. So I definitely recommend having kids if you're able to.
Yeah. That's good. I agree. I think I would be still pretty selfish as well. It pretty much just rips the selfishness out of you.
If you let it,
If you
that
let
is.
it.
Yeah.
You can fight it, that's true. But you have to fight pretty hard. Like, as a prophet, he has always used stories in our lives to speak messages for what he's doing in the body of Christ as well. Like, not all the time, but a lot of my life, he's shown me that that's like I've walked out, and in our marriage, we've walked out things that he was doing in the body. And so, at many times, I would be interceding for the church or for people, Christians, and he would lay different people on my heart. And it was so interesting to experience very tangibly the things that were happening in others as we lived it out. Like, it's just really interesting how he does that. But even in bringing him all the way from Lithuania to connect with me from California, melding cultures. Thankfully, we didn't have a lot of cultural differences because of the way I was raised, I think, partly. And then, yeah, we communicated about that pretty well. So thankfully, there was no like major shockers. But looking back, I recognize some of those things were cultural differences that we were hitting heads on. And I just thought it was a man thing. But
Well, it could have been a cultural men thing.
true. That's very true. And there was that.
Yeah.
Indeed. What do you remember was one of the first things that kind of was very helpful to us in our marriage?
Well, I feel like one of the important things that are very applicable in modern times that I'm seeing as well is that honest communication in terms of um, holding on to your convictions
Mm-hmm.
and not laying down who you are.
Yeah.
And I'll unpack that. So basically, I'm referring right now, you probably all have heard a term of being whipped. So, as a husband, especially. So, that always would really trigger me when I would hear, early on in the marriage when we would talk to some older couple about their secrets to their good relationship, and one of the things that I've heard and we heard
Mm-hmm.
together was, "Oh yeah, just say yes to everything your wife says," or
And
like,
apologize
and
for
apologize
everything
even before you committed any
wrongs.
wrongs against your wife. So that was usually heavily on the men's side. That would just trigger me really,
A
really
lot.
a lot. So to me, that's just it's like introducing this, dishonesty in the relationship, because like
Mm-hmm.
I do love my wife and I accept her the way she is, but I am not gonna be quiet about some things that I disagree
Yeah.
on.
Or that mean a lot to you.
And that mean,
Right.
yeah, exactly. And that does not mean that I'm being not a good husband.
Right.
It just means that I have my own convictions, and
Yeah.
because the marriage is it's a bunch of different compromises for the common good of the couple. So
True.
we have to compromise on some things. And to me, it's just, oh, sure, I'll do it. Or, sure, honey, I was wrong. Or, sure. Like at some point, you'll find yourself being beat down into this, mass of goo
Nothingness.
on the floor. And that's not attractive to the spouse either. Like
Yeah,
for a
eventually.
man to always be obliging and complying, even though the man has his own opinions about it. So, what I'm trying to say is that yes, you're going to have conflict. Yes, you
Mm-hmm.
will have disagreements, but it's worth it in the end because you get more respect because you're actually communicating some things that you believe in or you hold dear to your heart, and
Mm-hmm.
they might be a little bit different than your wife's, but that's okay.
Yes,
So
yes, that's good.
yeah, to me, I don't like conflict. I don't like fights, but to me, it's worth a fight sometimes. So
Yeah. And I really appreciated that. Like to me in the beginning, I had an unhealthy approach of trying to push him to his limits to see if he could handle all of me. And yes, he could. But it actually would have made me kind of nervous and uneasy if he was always just saying yes and letting it always be my way. Then I kind of like, who are you then? What are you like? Where are you? This is boring. Why would I want to just marry myself? But yet a part of me is wanting control and like, can you handle me? And if you can't, then I'm taking over. Like all subconscious. But when he stood up to me and wouldn't let me disrespect him, not that I wanted to disrespect him, but that's pretty much what was happening at some points, that made me understand, oh, I need to respect this man. And that is very disrespectful for me to always be pushing my way. I actually love it when he speaks up because he's way more lax than I am as far as like he doesn't have a ton of things that he wants this way or specifically that or whatever. He's pretty like compromising and we make a good team that way. But um, I've learned a lot from him in just being patient and like he was very accepting of who I am and where I'm at. And I've always had a really strong drive to, reach perfection. And I just would drag him along sometimes, hoping that he would want to do the same or whatever. But there is a point that you realize, okay, I married him because I love him and I love who he is and what he brings. And I keep trying to change some of that now. And that was not working and not fun for him or me.
and that's not to say that you have to disagree on everything.
Yeah,
Like you have to pick your battles, so to speak. Like for
definitely.
me, if it's something very important or totally the opposite of what I believe or whatever, yes, I am gonna talk about that
Hmm.
and possibly confront her, and same her with me. But if it's something that I don't care about, like, an interior room decoration, I don't really care about
Hmm.
what it should be. Like things like that. I mean, you have to be wise in those things because otherwise you're going to be fighting nonstop. So
Right.
just be yourself and just don't
Hmm.
forget that there's two individuals in the relationship,
Hmm.
and that her way is not the best way and your way might not be the best way either.
Right.
You have to come to that realization together. I mean, to you have to figure it out for yourselves what that looks like for your relationship.
Hmm. And I think another challenge that I think is very common to men and women in marriage is, it was harder for him to show vulnerability than for me. And some of you might disagree with me on this, but what I have begun to discover and understand is God did put that in the women to be the more relational side of the relationship, more of the feeler, emotional, first to be vulnerable, put yourself out there. And he puts us together to grow together, not just that he gets to forever remain non vulnerable. It's that I bring more of that and then we give into each other's. And I also had to learn sometimes to be less emotional and be able to let go of some things and not read into everything or whatever. I've had to work through my stuff. But I've accepted that God has given us that as a gift to be the connector, the relator with our children. We bring the nurture, the comfort, the, more expression of what love is in a tangible form, I guess. And I used to fight against that because I felt we need to bring 50-50 and it needs to look the way I would do it. And this is what love looks like. This is how you, whatever. And so we had to work that out. And I've really grown to understand the huge value for the differences of the way that we bring love, the way that we parent, um, and we complement each other in that. And I did have to push him a little, like pull that out of him, the vulnerability, because he did have some pretty strong walls up in those areas at first. He was vulnerable in some ways, but then other areas, I feel like, it wasn't until years down the road that it was like, you know what? I think there's more here. And so we started to go deeper there. And that has been a challenge, but so worth it because I'm always about, I want all that we can have. I want the more of God. I want the more of marriage. I don't settle. I'm like, I know there's more than this. So in some ways, that's been hard on my husband because I'm also impatient, but I've also learned things do take time. And he has been very patient with me, and we've we've grown a lot together. I'm really proud of where we're at today. Almost 25 years this month. How do you think we're doing?
I think we're doing good.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's not to say that we don't have challenges
Right.
in our relationship. We still do fight sometimes. It's not as often as it used to be. It's more quality fighting.
Yeah. Not as intense and explosive.
Yes. So there are, and to me, I've just accepted that that's part of marriage. You're gonna clash if
Right.
you're bringing two different individuals that are trying to work together and have
Become
a
one.
good relationship.
Yeah.
So you will have some conflict for sure,
Yeah.
but it's just matters how you're gonna deal with that conflict and how you're gonna treat your spouse. So I've been learning myself for a long time how to do it in a more uh,
Gentle.
civilized, gentle manner. Because my family fights were, this type of fighting here in America under the guise of Italian arguing. So it's very animated, very
Loud.
loud. Uh, Thankfully, it hasn't been violent with us,
Yes.
but
Yep.
that's what I'm used to. Um, just very intense, loud arguments. And Jessica is more calm, and that used to create arguments of its own because I'm used to people just confronting me the same way I fight, and that wasn't the case in our relationship. But then I realized that maybe the way I handle myself in those situations is not the right way. I am still working on myself sometimes. It's uh it's difficult to break something that you've been ingrained
For so long.
for so long.
So
Yeah.
true. And I have definitely appreciated his willingness because it does take willingness on both sides. And I feel like if you have love, you have God, and you have commitment and trust for things, then you can work through anything.
Hmm.
And even when one of those are broken, it's still possible. I want to say, I love how God has used marriage to really teach us about relationships in general. And back to the theme of kingdom coffee, um, I feel that marriage has taught us so much about how church should look and work, and that You have to be honest. You have to be willing to do bold communication. No PC, tiptoeing around each other, never wanting to offend one another, trying to please everybody. All that stuff just gets so weird and deceptive. And so it has been a really good practicing ground for doing life with other people. This is what it looks like. It's not always pretty, but if you love one another, then there is power to overcome anything. You know, if
Mhm.
you true love, not love, wrong definition of love, tiptoeing and never speaking the truth. And that is what we bring to any group or relationship. And some people have not liked that about us. We're a little too real, a little too loving. Our definition of love. Anyways, but yeah, we've just had to realize that's okay. Some people won't, we're not their cup of tea, and that's fine. But we love people and
Mhm.
we're willing to work through anything, but not everybody is. We will end on this very important note because many of you have commented and asked these questions. So I want to uncover this important topic. Is my husband truly happy because he never smiles in photos?
Well, that's a fallacy. I do smile in photos. You just don't see those photos
That's
because
true.
they don't exist. I'm just kidding. Anyway, I'm not anti-smile, and let's just put this
To
to
rest.
rest once and for all. I come from culture that we reserve smiling and being overly jovial for our close relationships. So that's why there is a thing in our culture that on the street, you don't know most of the people on the street, so why would you smile at them? I mean, it's logical. I mean, I like that logic myself. And but if you know a person, if you're close to a person, sure, yeah, people smile and they're happy to see each other. And that's not to say that all of the Russians are non-smiling. There's a bunch of smiling ones.
Yeah.
It's just my generation when I was in the cultural setting that I was raised in, smiling to strangers was not a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So uh, it kind of stuck. So I do smile. I do smile in pictures. I do smile with people that
You know.
I'm comfortable with or I know. And I'm learning to be more smiley, but it's one thing that's not very important on my
A list.
hierarchy of needs. So that's the
And
assumption.
he is actually quite funny and has a great sense of humor. And many Russians do. There's lots of joking, lots of smiles. They have great stories, and this guy especially. So there you go. Now you understand it thoroughly. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for joining us. Have a beautiful day. So I just wanted to add I wrote this book, and um, it's 9,966,673 easy steps to becoming the perfect Christian. And I thought you might enjoy giving it a try after watching our video, because it kind of is when I was really religious about thinking my husband needed to be more spiritual. And I didn't understand the depths of giving things time, different personalities. It's kind of a glimpse into what it can look like when you get really religiously focused on all the negatives in your marriage and forget to acknowledge all the good. And then I also wrote this book, Mama, God Knows My Name. That's little Abigail and me on the bed, where she often tells me of her experiences with God. And I wrote it in regards to just our different personalities as children and things that God showed me about helping them encounter God. So it was really fun to write, and I absolutely love the cover that was done by my nephew, Tyler Seaborn.